Right now, somewhere in your house, a fly just landed on something you'd rather not think about. Maybe it was garbage, maybe it was something dead, and in the next few minutes, that same fly might land on your plate. You'll wave it away, maybe even laugh about it, and move on with your day. But here's the part nobody tells you. If this creature vanished from the earth tomorrow, entire ecosystems would start collapsing within weeks. Your food supply would shrink, modern medicine would lose one of its most important tools, and some of the biggest scientific discoveries of the last century would have never happened. Today we're going deep into the secret life of the fly, the creature you hate, the creature you can't live without, and the creature that quietly outlasted the dinosaurs. A survivor older than you can imagine. When the asteroid hit 66 million years ago and wiped out almost every large creature on the planet, flies were already ancient. They had been buzzing around swamps and forests for tens of millions of years before that impact, and they walked away from the extinction event almost untouched. That's not luck. That's design. Flies belong to a group called Diptera, meaning two wings in Greek, because unlike almost every other flying insect, they only have one functional pair of wings. The second pair shrank over millions of years into tiny club-shaped stubs called halteres. These act like a built-in gyroscope, letting a fly twist, stop, reverse, and hover with a precision no bird or bee can match. That's the secret behind why your hand always seems to miss. Scientists have cataloged around 160,000 fly species so far, and new ones are discovered every single year in rainforests, in mountain caves, even in city basements. Some researchers believe the real number could be well over 500,000, and the size range is staggering. Some midges are barely visible to the naked eye, while the largest fly on record, found in the forests of South America, has a wingspan approaching 5 inches. That's not something you sweat with a rolled-up newspaper. That's something you back away from. One farmyard. 6,000 species. Here's a number that puts things into perspective. A single English farmyard can be home to over 6,000 different species of fly at once. To them, it isn't a farm. It's an entire civilization. Every corner of it is being used. Some are laying eggs in fresh dung the moment it hits the ground. Some are hunting other insects mid-air. Some are quietly pollinating the hedgerows. Some are locked in violent competition over mates on a single hoofprint filled with rainwater. What looks like meaningless chaos to us is, up close, one of the most tightly organized societies on the planet, just running on a timescale and a set of rules we never bothered to notice. The body built to never get caught. Let's talk about why you can never win a fight against a fly with your bare hands. A fly's compound eyes are made of thousands of individual lenses, giving it almost a full 360-degree view of the world around it. On top of that, it has 3 extra simple eyes on its head, just to track light and movement. That's 5 eyes working together at once, in different modes, at the same time. And here's the part that should really unsettle you. A fly processes visual information about 4 times faster than a human brain does. What feels like a lightning-fast swipe of your hand looks to the fly like a slow-motion replay. It sees the movement, calculates the angle, and launches itself out of danger before your hand is even halfway there. Some researchers believe a fly's brain begins preparing its legs for takeoff before it has even finished deciding which direction to flee. In other words, it's reacting to a threat it hasn't fully processed yet, a kind of built-in head start that no human reflex can match. Its legs are covered in microscopic hairs that secrete a sticky compound, which is exactly how it walks upside down on your ceiling without falling. And strangest of all, a fly doesn't taste with its mouth, it tastes with its feet. The second it lands on your food, it already knows whether it's sweet, rotten, safe, or toxic, before it takes a single bite. That's why a fly doesn't just casually sit on your sandwich. It's actively scanning it, chemical by chemical. Its wings beat somewhere between 100 and 200 times per second, which sounds impressive until you realize a honeybee beats its wings even faster. What a fly lacks in raw speed, it makes up for in maneuverability that no bee could ever pull off flying backward, stopping midair instantly, and rotating on the spot like a tiny helicopter. Love and war on a cowpat. If you want to see flies at their most dramatic, don't look at your kitchen, look at a fresh cowpat. Male dung flies gather around it the moment it lands, waiting for a female to arrive. When she does, there's no courtship, No hesitation, mating happens almost instantly. But that's when the real fight begins. While the pair is still joined together, rival males circle them, looking for any opportunity to force them apart with a well-placed kick or a wedged leg. The current male has to physically defend his position using his legs and wings until the female finishes laying her eggs. Only then does the contest end, and the losers move on to find another target. Nearby, a completely different species carefully inspects blades of grass hanging directly above the dung. She lays her eggs there with precision, because timing is everything. If the eggs hatch too late, the crust on the dung will have hardened too much for the larvae to break through. It's a race against the clock that plays out silently, thousands of times a day, in every field on Earth. The hunter wearing a disguise. Not every fly is harmless. Some are stone-cold predators. The hoverfly looks almost exactly like a wasp or a bee, which keeps predators away, but it has no sting at all. It's a complete bluff. As an adult, it pollinates flowers with incredible precision, but as a larva, it becomes something else entirely. It moves through colonies of aphids, grabbing them with sharp-hooked mouthparts and draining them dry, one after another. Aphids try to defend themselves by oozing sticky sap to jam the larva's mouthparts, but the larva has a counter-move. It simply lifts the aphid into the air until the defensive fluid drips away, then finishes the job. Then there's the robber fly, sometimes called the assassin fly, which ambushes other flying insects in midair and kills them almost instantly with a single strike to a nerve cluster. In many ecosystems, robber flies do the same population control job that birds and bats do, except most people have never even heard of them. The dark side nobody talks about enough. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. The common housefly doesn't bite and doesn't carry venom. It doesn't need to. Its body is covered in tiny bristles that pick up whatever it last walked through, and often, that means sewage, decaying flesh, or animal waste. Scientists have found the bacteria behind typhoid, cholera, dysentery, and tuberculosis all riding on the legs of a single fly at the same time. It doesn't take a swarm to make you sick. It can take just one landing. Then there are the flies that are far more dangerous than anything buzzing around your kitchen. In parts of Africa, the tsetse fly carries a parasite that causes sleeping sickness, a disease that killed millions of people over the last century and still kills today. The infection creeps in slowly. Fever first, then disrupted sleep, then confusion, then coma. Strangely, this fly ignores zebras completely. Scientists believe the stripes confuse its ability to judge distance and find a place to land. So while every other large animal is at risk, zebras graze in peace just a few feet away from danger that would kill almost anything else. And then there's a species most people have never heard of, one that lays its eggs directly into open wounds, ears and noses of living animals, where the larvae feed on living flesh rather than waiting for something to die first. As the climate warms, its range is slowly creeping further north than it has ever gone before. A quiet reminder that a warmer world doesn't just mean higher temperatures. It means old threats reaching new places. Even history was shaped by this insect, more than most textbooks admit. When Napoleon's army marched into Russia in 1812 with over 500,000 soldiers, more of them died from disease spread through contaminated food and filth than from actual combat. Typhus, dysentery, and other infections tore through the camps, carried from waste to food by flies moving freely between the two. By the time the retreat from Moscow began, the army had already been broken not by the winter, but by an insect nobody was watching. The same pattern repeated in the American Civil War, where twice as many soldiers died of disease as died in battle, and again in the trenches of the First World War. Long before anyone understood germs, flies were quietly deciding the outcome of wars. Humanity has been trying to wipe them out for well over a century. In the late 1800s, several cities ran fly-killing campaigns, even paying children for every 100 flies they killed. It barely made a dent. In the middle of the 20th century came a chemical solution so aggressive it was sprayed across entire farmlands and cities, and it worked, briefly, until it became clear the same chemical was wiping out birds, fish, and bees, right along with the flies. The cost was judged too high, and the chemical was banned in most of the world. The flies, as always, simply carried on. The creature that secretly keeps the world running. Here's the twist most people never expect. Every time an animal dies in the wild, fly larvae are often the first responders, sometimes arriving within 20 to 30 minutes of death. Without them, forests and fields would slowly bury themselves under a layer of waste that never breaks down. Flies are nature's cleanup crew, quietly recycling death back into nutrients for the next generation of life. A single carcass that would otherwise sit and rot for weeks can be reduced to almost nothing in just a few days by an army of larvae most of us never even notice. They're also the second most important pollinators on Earth, right behind bees. Carrots, onions, parsley, buckwheat, dozens of crops we eat every day depend on flies to reproduce. Some flowers have even evolved shapes so narrow and awkward that bees physically can't get inside them, leaving flies as the only insect capable of doing the job. And here's the detail that should really change how you think about them. Cacao trees, the source of every bar of chocolate ever made, are pollinated almost exclusively by tiny biting midges from the fly family. Attempts to grow cacao in greenhouses without these specific insects have historically failed. The flowers simply never get pollinated. No fly, no chocolate. It really is that simple. The bandage made of maggots. This next part sounds like something out of a horror movie, but it's real medicine. Centuries ago, battlefield surgeons noticed strange wounds infested with fly larvae, often healed cleaner and faster than untouched wounds. It made no sense at the time. How could a wound crawling with worms end up healthier than one that was left alone? It turns out maggots eat only dead tissue and leave healthy flesh completely alone, while releasing natural compounds that fight off infection-causing bacteria. In effect, they clean a wound and sterilize it at the same time. During both World Wars, doctors deliberately let larvae grow in soldiers' wounds when antiseptics ran out, and it worked. Today, in an age where bacteria are becoming resistant to our best antibiotics, faster than new drugs can be developed, larval therapy is making a genuine comeback in modern hospitals, used to treat chronic wounds, diabetic ulcers, and infections that refuse to respond to anything else. Flies also help solve murders. Forensic entomologists study the exact species of fly found on a body, along with the growth stage of its larva, to calculate the time of death down to just a few hours. It's an entire branch of science built around the fact that flies arrive at a corpse in a strict, predictable sequence, and that sequence has cracked cases that would otherwise have stayed cold forever. The fly that went to space before humans did. In 1947, a small jar of fruit flies was strapped to a captured German V-2 rocket and launched into the sky over the New Mexico desert. They crossed the edge of space and came back alive, becoming the first living creatures to survive spaceflight, years before any human or animal astronaut followed. That flight became the first real step toward understanding how cosmic radiation affects living tissue, information that would later prove critical for planning human space travel. That same tiny fruit fly, known scientifically as Drosophila, went on to become one of the most important tools in the history of science. In the early 1900s, a researcher chose it for genetic experiments simply because it was cheap, tiny, and reproduced unbelievably fast. A new generation every 2 weeks, with up to 100 offspring per clutch. That speed let scientists observe hundreds of generations in the time it would take to study just a handful in mice. It was on this fly that the basic rules of genetic inheritance were discovered, work that later earned a Nobel Prize. Decades later, when researchers finally mapped its entire genome, they found something almost unbelievable. Roughly 70% of the genes linked to human disease have a matching version inside this fly. Cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, all of it is actively being studied inside a creature smaller than a grain of rice, because it's simply faster, cheaper, and easier than studying it in anything larger. What happens if they disappear? Picture a world without flies. It doesn't happen all at once, it unravels slowly. Within weeks, dead animals stop breaking down properly. The smell of decay starts building up in forests and fields that never used to have that problem. Within the first season, pollination begins to suffer, and some plants that depend entirely on flies simply stop producing fruit. Crop losses start small, but they compound year after year. Birds that rely on fly larvae for food start switching to other sources, and some can't find a replacement fast enough. The predators that feed on those birds follow soon after. Cacao trees stop being pollinated, and chocolate slowly disappears from mass production, not because of money or demand, but because there's simply nothing left to carry the pollen. Medical research loses one of its most valuable tools overnight, and treatments for chronic wounds that depend on larval therapy vanish along with it. It isn't an explosion. It's a slow-motion collapse, one link at a time, until the whole chain gives way. The uncomfortable truth. We call someone gentle by saying they wouldn't hurt a fly. We call a quiet observer a fly on the wall. We call the one flaw that ruins everything else a fly in the ointment. No other insect has crawled this deep into our language, our history, and our fear. The fly disgusts us because evolution wired us to fear decay, and that instinct has kept us alive for thousands of years. But disgust isn't the same as understanding. This is a creature that has survived every mass extinction, every insecticide, every war humanity has ever waged against it. And in return, it quietly pollinates our food, cleans up our waste, heals our wounds, and unlocks the secrets of our own biology. Next time one lands near your plate, go ahead and wave it away. That's completely fair. But maybe, for just a second, remember exactly what you're waving away: a creature 65 million years older than us, one that has already survived everything meant to destroy it, and one that, right now, is quietly doing work for this planet that nothing else can replace. If this blew your mind, hit subscribe, because at Midnight Crawlers, we go where most people are too afraid or too disgusted to look. New videos every day.